Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to the first in quite a bit, actually, of Horus Heresy content that I am doing. Hopefully, I know the other guys have been having some stuff going on, but maybe now that I'm trying to talk about some heresy stuff as well, can get at least one or both of them on to start talking about. I don't know if we'll be able to do full reviews. I don't know if their lives or my life, for that instance, is positioned in such a way, but I would like to get some of that back in because that's sort of what we were built on, and honestly, it's still a great game. The reason I'm making this video now is, as of currently, tomorrow, I'm supposed to play my first game of the third edition. I haven't played second edition in quite a while. I know the newest edition came out in, July. Just between other things I had going on, other games, doing tons and tons of conquest, and just other stuff, just didn't get around to it. And at my local area, it hasn't been in the front seat of games for GW games. We've been trying to push more 40k or Age of Sigmar because those are the boxes. One, people like them, and not that people don't like this, but people do like them. A little bit easier to get into. People know a little bit more, and those are the boxes we got on the walls. Though the heresy groups in my area have still been playing, they've still been holding events. I just weekends haven't been able to do with the wife's business and a few other things, so I haven't really been getting the games in. So I hadn't actually sat down and done third edition. I have a Dark Angels army as well as a Death Guard army, though I am considering selling the Dark Angels because I don't know if I'm going to keep up with two armies for it. I don't necessarily know if I need to, especially with the way they do Force org charts now. We'll talk about that. But essentially hadn't gotten around to it. Did have a game scheduled for tomorrow. Have the two big books in hand. I'm actually probably going to play my Death Guard. I know this is the Libra Star Days one, the good guys, but there's plenty of good builders. New Recruit actually does it very well, so I was able to build out a Death Guard army with that. But we are going to talk about essentially initial impressions before the first game. So thoughts on that, and then once I actually play the game, discussing it more, because I'm always been a proponent of you don't really know something until you actually try it. You can talk about the idea of the game or what you think or any of that, but until you actually sit down at the table and give it a shot, it's to me it's all theoretical. It hasn't been made real yet. I can usually tell if I really wouldn't like something, but I usually can't judge, or I think it's hard to judge how much you truly like something until you try it. So we are going to talk about, I don't know if there's going to be one video or two. Partly it depends on how long I talk for now. I always say things will be short, and I tend to talk a lot. I talk for a living. So I don't know exactly if there's going to be two separate videos or if it's going to be one video and then there's going to be a cut in the middle and so on, and maybe a different time of day and things like that. So look to show notes or anything like that to tell you, or the title, how I title this. All right, so I just want to give it a brief overview. Maybe since it's been a little bit, my own experience. I didn't play first edition. I played a good amount of second edition. We covered everything related to second edition, went through it in great detail, did a whole bunch of different campaigns, played a good amount of games of it. And like I said, then just me personally, gaming in general dropped off a little bit just for me personally, and kind of pushed the conquest for any of the gaming that I did do. Of the two armies I had, I was just enjoying my Death Guard more, partly because of what I had built up, partly because of their play style. I love that sort of implacable advance. I know that's a rule in the game, but essentially, that sort of slow moving force. I love heavy weapon type stuff. And the fact that, we're stationary. We can walk around and use these things. That just made it fun. Now, in our play groups, a lot of times we did, sort of self-regulate our lists. So, if you run the Reaping, you wouldn't run every heavy weapon team you could, or things like that. It's just the way that we did it to make sure games was much more fair and balanced and all. So, I scheduled the game. A local player asked me if I'd play a game. I said sure. Luckily, my one friend let me borrow these books because I don't currently have my own copies. I am going to get them after this, but I couldn't get my hands on them quite fast enough. So he gave me those to take a look through. And I sat down over the last 2 days and read through this monstrosity, is maybe the best way to put it. It is good, of course. They give you tons and tons of lore. I know lore. I can't tell you if they've said anything different. I didn't go through that. I would like to at some point, but I know most of it anyway, or at least enough to get by. So then we get into the rules. Now, for a GW book, I will say on say a scale of 1 to 5 in terms of readability, I'd probably, what I will say for trying to make things clear and not having you go, wait, here's this case, you didn't cover this. How does this work? I would say for the moment, I'm seeing this one almost as like a probably 3.5 or maybe even a 4. They do a very good job of, very carefully saying out fully what they mean. So there's a few spots where I saw it like I doubt I could find it as quickly right this moment. But I know when they were talking about different special rules, they said, oh, when you have this rule and you are this thing with this piece. So they kind of try to call it out pretty big. What was I looking at? Melta. I think that was one of the ones I was just looking at before because I was trying to put my list together. So yeah, if at least one model in a unit with the vehicle type and so on. Another one's when they talk about as long as the majority of your unit has this rule and they fit these circumstances and so on. They're good. They're a lot better than they were in the past of exactly calling out in every spot exactly how something works. What they've done in the past with GW is they might fully expressly say something in one spot, but they wouldn't repeat it that way again. Here, they're going through for those of us who are familiar with games or their games specifically, don't necessarily need all that gory detail in all of them, but they put it just to make sure there's not those cases of asking about it. It's covered. You know how the thing works because they said it the same way. That doesn't necessarily make the rules easy. Readable, yes. I think this is a very readable book. I think going through it, I will say, at least on the offset, my hope is tomorrow, maybe if I can wake up early enough, I'm going to try to go through them all over again. I've read them in detail just about 2 times at this point, but I feel I have to go through it again. And the reason for that being is I don't think there's any problem overall with the differences. I like pretty much all of the differences that they've changed. There's some that maybe aren't, that cause me a little bit of grief, but they're not bad for the game in general. But I will say, when you looked at the previous edition was what? 6th edition or 5th edition, essentially, or 5.5 or 6.5, whichever one it might have been. But it played like old 40K. So, hey, I had played that edition. I understood the rules. You made a few changes. You added some reactions and a little bits here and there, but otherwise it felt like that game. This one doesn't. It is heresy. In every way, it is heresy. But the way the rules are, knowing past edition doesn't really help you. Knowing 2nd edition of Horus Heresy probably does to an extent, but there's enough that's different. I mean, knowing any GW game could probably get you to the level that 2nd edition Heresy gets you for this new 3rd edition book. What I mean by that is, you have a start or status phase. You have beginning of your turn. You move, you shoot, you charge, you assault, or fight, or however they want to put it. And then you end your turn. That's true in like all of their games, pretty much. Ever since they removed psychic phase from a lot of these, or magic phase, or whatever you might want to call it. So that I think is fine, but there's enough little differences. Something I was going through before, and I was again looking at Melta and all that kind of stuff. I realized, wait, I didn't see an instant death rule. I don't, there's not one here, or at least if I'm wrong, be aware, this is the before I played it. So like I said, I'm going to go through again and probably catch little things. So hopefully I'm reasonably accurate with this. Or if you make any mistakes, just let me know in the comments below. But little things like that. Okay, all that's gone. Weapon profiles. Your weapons no longer always just base 1 damage. Pretty much that's all they were before because, hey, you had instant death. So if my weapon was strong enough, I don't need a weapon be 2 or 3 wounds because I'm going to double you out anyway. Didn't matter. Now that's not a thing. Yeah, your last cannons in certain packages do 2 damage, or some of them do 3, like the ones on a Spartan. Some of the other ones are 1 damage, but hey, they're heavy D for damage. Heavy now is, hey, if you don't move, you get a +1 to whatever thing it talks about. So if it says extra damage, then instead of 1 damage, you are +1 additional damage. So now you're 2 damage on your last cannons if you haven't moved. Or if you're Death Guard, you haven't moved more than 4 inches. So there's enough difference that when I was all said and done, I understood the basics of what to do, but I know there's a lot of bits that I have wrong in my mind. And I know I'm going to have them wrong probably until I sit down and actually go through and play it. It is a base, GW game. It feels like Heresy because of the stat lines, the weapons, the look, the units, all of that. But the rules, I think the rules are more different than they said, personally. At least they feel more different to me than they said. When I look at edition changes in 40K, I've went through, I don't know, 6 edition changes at this point. Some of those were big changes, some were very small. This feels like one of, in this sort of avenue, a reasonably big change to me. So maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. That's at least how I feel about it. Things I like. I personally really enjoy the other characteristics. If you play like Rogue Trader era edition, or played some other stuff, if you play like Inquisitor or things like that. I think Inquisitor did. Maybe they didn't. Essentially, those sort of things. You had more characteristics. You didn't just have leadership. Leadership didn't cover everything. Okay, so you have leadership, you have willpower, intelligence, cool. And they all work on different things. And one thing is, are you doing what's the distinction terminology? So I'm trying to remember, because I've went through it, but I've got to get good at the particular wording that they use. There is what? Checks and tests. I think that's the 2 different terminology they use. So like one is a single D6. I think a check is a single D6, and a test is both. A 2D6, kind of like an old leadership test. Oh yeah, there it is. Sorry, yeah. Tests are the 1, and checks are the full thing. I believe I have that correct. Yes. So there's 2 different types of that. Okay, now there's a little bit more. And like I said, they both can be characteristic. Before you could have an initiative test and a leadership check. Yes, those are the terminologies they use, but you really didn't have a lot of other of that type. We didn't really have strength checks per se. At least I can't think of anything that did. Maybe something did. You would get that more in fantasy, or at least older editions of fantasy. So the granularity is nice. I do like it, but it's going to take a while to get used to that granularity. I think you need the reference compendiums or cheat sheets next to you. I plan on having them, printing some out, and having them right next to me to help me out. Statuses. I absolutely love the statuses. I think that's an absolutely great addition. Going to 4 from essentially pinned and falling back or routed is what they did before. Hey, now you're stunned. Okay, you don't declare reactions. Suppressed. Hey, your shots are snapshots. And hey, snapshots are better. It used to be, no matter how great and wondrous you were, your snapshots were on 6s. And certain special rules on vehicles, or at least Dark Angel vehicles, put it on 5s. But now it's, hey, if you got a good enough ballistic skill, your snapshots are on something different. So for like a Space Marine, snapshots are actually on the thing just went away where I had it a second ago. They're on a 5 now. So instead of going to 6, you're hitting 1 better. It's now more important. You get something out of it. It feels like you're actually doing the sort of thing. There is now auto success and auto fail on shooting. The chart was always interesting for people who aren't used to it. The big thing with the ballistic skill chart is essentially 7 minus your ballistic skill is what you need. So if your ballistic skill 4, 7 minus 4, so you need a 3. But I said, yeah, snapshots are on a 5. But now, if you have it used to be if your ballistic skill was like a 10, you were a 2-up rerollable to hit. You never got better than a 2, but if you rolled a 1 and you were above a 6, you got rerolls. So if your ballistic skill was a 6, you'd be a 2-up, then a 6-up, and so on counting up. Well, now, no, you will hit on a 2. So I guess there's technically, actually at 10, it's an automatic. You get it. You don't bother rolling. But on 6 to 9, you roll. But if you roll a certain number or better, it's critical. So on ballistic skill 6, it's still a 2-up. You still fail on a 1. I guess in a way, it is technically worse for that number, because if you roll a 1, you don't get the 6 to roll at it. So your odds are a little bit worse. Not by much, but a little bit. But if you roll a 6, now it's a critical. So now you can get that as well. So you can do a bit more. So I do like the way that they did that. Toughness chart, okay, that's all fine. Vehicle damage. Vehicles are generally more resilient, more hull points. You really only lose them. You only lose them in glancing if you glance the same effect multiple times, which was always a thing in past 40k. But now penetrating results, there's no explode from that. You just do damage. You don't do any other effects or anything like that. So vehicle resiliency is great. Armor 14 vehicles that don't have armor bane are going to feel pretty strong. I love that because I've had plenty of times where, yeah, someone lucky shoots my Spartan with an AP, 2 weapon, hits me with a last cannon, they roll the 6, that's it, boom, gone. There's your 400 point unit gone. 300 point unit, depending on what you have. Kratos, great, or Kratos can easily be destroyed, sort of thing. So they've removed all of that, which is an improvement to me. That does mean that certain weapons are more deadly because they need to be able to make up for all of that. Weapon skill chart, I believe, is still the same, although they lowered a dreadnoughts. Dreadnought was a problem before because dreadnoughts were weapon skill 5, so basic Marines had to hit them on 5s. Dreadnoughts are mostly 4s now. Extra toughness for your Terminators. Terminators are all now essentially toughness 5. You're a Space Marine wearing a tank, and you were the same toughness as a regular Space Marine. Yes, I understand Ceramite armor is big and powerful, but the lore tells us that Terminator armor, tactical dreadnought armor, is nigh impenetrable to anything but the craziest of stuff. But my bolter still wounds you just as easy. No, it doesn't anymore. So a lot of the changes I really do like. I think they've done a lot for balance, and I think they've done a lot in terms of good granularity. I do think if you played it before, that the level of complication they have is an extra bit. I think it's going to take some time to get used to. Another thing, reactions. I really liked what they did reactions because you just have less of them. In general, it feels to me like looking at that you have less and less crazed in general, or they at least toned it down. There's not 6 different ways to shoot people. You're not shooting people tons and tons like you did before. I remember before with certain armies, now you couldn't go into them. I do like the setup for charge and then charge. Charge rolls around with D6 because you have a setup move first. So you get a little bit of a move. If you didn't reach them, if you reach them, it's over. You're in combat. If not, they get to shoot you. And hey, they're going to be snap shooting you unless they use a reaction, but otherwise they're going to be snap shooting you. Snapshots, in that case, snapshots and can only be assault weapons. So only certain weapons are allowed to do it as well. But otherwise, you get a little bit of shooting into the opponent, and then they do a d6 into you. Well, they roll 2d6, they take the better of the dice, but they do 6 into you. So your charges for most units are more reliable because you're not just flat rolling 2d6 and hoping your average is 7 there. On an initiative, on a move 6, initiative 4, you're getting, my apologies, let me see if I had the chart. Here it is. So you're looking at, move 6, initiative 4, you're looking at 10, that's 3-inch there. So 3-inch and the reroll on that is about the same number. Because on those 2 dice, you should average at least a 3. One of those dice should probably be a 3 or better. So you're looking at a 6, potentially 7 on the charge, which is about what the average you would have got before. There's a chance you hit them anyway, but you could, on average, roll a little bit better. Since you have those 2 dice, if you're rolling a 4, 5, or a 6, now you're getting further than you did before. And especially if you're fast, you get a big bonus for being fast. You're a unit of jump pack Marines. You're move 12 with initiative 4. You're now getting a 5-inch move before the rest of it. So you might get in automatically. And even if you don't, you could still be a good amount away and have a good shot at getting to them. Although the long bomb charges don't happen the same sort of way. So you can't be quite as far away potentially to still make it. So it's more reliable unless you were hoping for that double 6 charge roll in. Okay, so, and a lot of other stuff stays the same. The way you hit people, the way you wound people, all of that seems very similar. Like I said, I didn't notice many big differences. I'm sure there'll be some when I go through it. biggest thing for me is the way to build an army. Okay. They said it's meant to be more freeing. I found it so much more restrictive. Now, maybe that's because I had an army or armies built in the old style and the options and the way I took them. And I looked at it this way. And there's points changes, of course, as well. So that helped me out. I would say building the army, I had less things, or at least for the list that I put together. Yeah, probably less, or maybe about the same. I put a Spartan in the list where my Death Guard usually don't take a Spartan. They would take a Land Raider Proteus, but I didn't usually have a Spartan because my Grave Wardens would walk. The way it is now, essentially, I'm going to use a Spartan for them because, hey, why not? And that we have a little bit less models to worry about for this first game. But I would say it took me quite a while to... The way you build a list isn't complicated, but making your armies fit into it as a player who had a Force Org style army, I found it to be a big challenge. One, didn't notice at first. It made it easier when I noticed, the way that different characters add into that. Oh, my phone is in the front. It's going to bug me until I check to remember the names of who can do a what. One, okay, they go the little symbol thing. They did the same thing for Imperialis. It annoys me to an extent, but so be it. Oh, is it Centurions? Centurions let you bring 2 auxiliary detachments instead of 1. Yeah, I kind of feel you need a Centurion. For me personally, my army used to only take 2 characters. To make this fit, I had to go to 3. And, okay, that's not the end of the world, but that also means I had to do some more painting now. I just didn't have those characters put together. I luckily, at least the Siege Breaker, they put him with a Thunderhammer because that's the way I put mine. That's the way I always took mine. Even though he was in shooting units and rarely got into combat, he went with a Thunderhammer because I liked the way he looked with a Thunderhammer. But I'm finding I have to add a little bit more in. Having a prime unit helps because that can get you 1 extra options. But having a slot, so for anyone who does, everyone who, if you're watching this, you probably know, but I'm going to say it anyway. When you take essentially your characters, for all intents and purposes, command and prime command, not prime command, what do they call it? So I have to go and take a look at it because I'm just not good with the terminology. It takes me a while for terminology. Ask any of my students, it takes me a long, long time to get good with their names. Unbelievably long, far too long. Honestly. Oh, and the mic is actually a different spot than normally, so hopefully it's not too terrible hearing a little bit of page flipping, but we're doing some page flipping because we're trying to look at all this stuff here. So, I don't know, it's in the other book. Okay, well, I'm going into this. One thing I will always complain about. It shifted a little bit there. The way they do these books, these giant tomes, it's all well and good, but it's completely impractical in every way to bring to a game. I've never enjoyed that personally. I know things, you can find some of the resources. I know there's some builders out there, but it's a crapshoot, and I really don't like it. So, high command and command. So they allow you to take auxiliary or apex. So your high command can let you take apex. That's essentially how you get retinues and other characters. And Vanguard, which is elites. But then otherwise they let you take detachments. Here's the big thing though, the detachment, heavy support. Heavy support is how you take your dreadnoughts. A heavy support detachment, so a character, buying a command or high command character lets you unlock one of these. You unlock the heavy support, you may take 1 dread. Okay, so what happens if I want 2 dreads? Because my army in the past had 2 dreads. Well, that's 2 characters then, counting for those 2. Your base number of characters total that you're going to have, unless you do a little shenanigan stuff, is 4. So, taking the guy so I can get an extra really helped out. Or, like I said, taking the, what is it called? The prime choice or whatever they call it. So I can get the 1 extra. Because one of those options is, hey, you get to just take 1 thing. 1 extra thing somewhere. kind of felt necessary. I was having a hard time. I could not build what I had as an old list in this whatsoever. Now, that's all well and good, but personally, I have some extras, but I didn't have so many extras that, I knew what I liked to use. I didn't have so much extra stuff that I'm like, oh, well, I'm sitting on, 15,000 points worth of stuff. I'm going to just throw whatever together. No, I kind of have some spots. I have 3 saber tanks. Could you be able to take a unit of 3? I'm not taking the 3. At least for the way I don't have a lot of the other. They put them as saber tanks. I think are recon technically. I don't have a lot of the recon units for the army. I took saber tanks. Well, the recon unit auxiliary lets you take 2, and all tanks are individual. So if I want 3, I'd have to take 2 of those auxiliary, which means now I'd probably have to buy in and get some more stuff to fill out that slot. That's all well and good. I just found, for me personally, someone who had an army, I found it a bit more confusing. I understand they say it's more freedom. It didn't feel like more freedom to me. Maybe that's because I usually only took 2 characters. Maybe it's because of the options I had and all of that. But for me, it felt much more constricted. I felt that, hey, I want this sort of thing. I wanted heavy weapons. Okay, where can I look? Where can I grab the heavy weapon? Okay, it's only in these particular spots. It took me a little while to figure out exactly how to get Death Shroud into it. And they're not even in my list because couldn't fit the right detachments to do it, kind of thing. So I fully understand what they're going for. I'm sure it's absolutely fine. To me, I don't see it as a benefit currently. Maybe it will be. But for me personally, for now, not unless I buy up a bunch more stuff. And I'm sure they would love that, and I'm sure at some point I will get some more things. But I don't know. It's something about it just bugs me a bit. Do let me know what is your experience with, especially if you're a player who's played for a while, both in the previous edition and this one. Do you like this more now? Is this the the growing pains until I do enough of it and then it feels good? Maybe that's the case. Maybe I played a bunch. I realized, hey, you know what? Oh, I never took these sort of. Oh, I never wanted to use the Zephon before. Oh, now I have a reason to put him in and all of that. So I don't know. That's just my sort of view. So I will say overall, I am optimistic. Not even cautiously optimistic. I'm optimistic about the game. I like the direction they're going. I think there's enough changes to make it better overall, but enough to annoy me that it's going to take a while to fully be on board with it. And most of that is probably more from the list building aspect. I think the 4-sword chart of the past, honestly, to me, it was better. But all right, so that's going to do it for this part. You're either going to see the video end at this point, or post the game, we are going to talk about my thoughts after that and how all of that went. Since this went about 30 minutes, I'd still like to do them together, but I have to see how long that goes. It probably makes more sense to put them together, but if that's a very long thing, I know super long videos can be a little bit tough. All right, well, that's it for now. Let's see what the other one is, and post-game, so hopefully, maybe a little bit earlier than this time tomorrow, since I'll have work the day after, we'll be talking about how my Death Guard did against, I'm not entirely sure what army my friend's going to play. I know he had Thousand Suns at one point. I don't, but that was prior to painting any of it. I hadn't seen him in a while, so I'm not sure what he painted them as, or if he ended up getting them painted. So I guess we're going to find out.